I left my wife in labor from my dad's meeting. Big mistake. My dad made me miss my twins' birth. He paid the price. Part 1, cold open/hook. The scream tore through me like a gunshot. Not just pain, something deeper. A raw, primal sound I'd never heard from her before. I was standing at the side of the hospital bed, my left hand caught in her death grip, my right trying to dab her forehead with a damp towel. Her knuckles were bone white against my skin. Every time another contraction slammed into her, she crushed my fingers until I felt the blood drain out, leaving them numb and tingling. The delivery room smelled like antiseptic and sweat. A faint metallic tang lingered in the air. I couldn't tell if it was from the floor stand next to her bed or just my own fear turning metallic in my mouth. Somewhere above the chaos, a fetal monitor beeped in steady, artificial rhythm, a machine's cold imitation of life. It was just after 3 a.m. on a Sunday night. We were expecting twins. We'd been here since 6 p.m., and the hours had blurred into a haze of shouting, groaning, and the low murmur of nurses exchanging updates. I tried to focus on her breathing, short, fast bursts and long, shaky exhales out. But then my phone buzzed in my pocket. At first, I ignored it. Nothing could be more important than what was happening right in front of me. But it buzzed again, and again, 3 times in 30 seconds. I slipped my hand free. Or rather, I pried her fingers off and took half a step toward the corner of the room where my jacket lay over a chair. The screen lit up a name I could never ignore, Dad. I glanced back at her. She was biting her lips so hard I thought she might draw blood. Her face twisted in agony as another contraction hit. A nurse leaned over her, murmuring something encouraging, adjusting the oxygen tube near her nose. I answered, "Yeah." My voice was low, almost guilty, like I'd been caught doing something wrong. He didn't bother with hello. "I heard she's in labor." "Yeah, it's intense. We've been here for—" "Good," he cut me off. "Listen, we've got that presentation Monday morning. Clients flying in. You need to be sharp." I frowned. "Dad, There's nothing you can do there," he interrupted again. "You think standing around watching a baby come out is going to help her? It's overrated. Nobody tells you about the gore. Trust me, you'll be glad you skipped it." I could hear his pen scratching across paper, the faint click of his watch against his desk as he made notes. His tone was the same one he'd used my entire life when explaining reality to me. Clipped, certain, like he was doing me a favor by telling me how the world really worked. "You need to get some rest. You look like hell when you're tired. And I'm not losing this deal because you were up all night in a hospital room." I froze, phone pressed to my ear, my pulse hammering. My wife let out a strangled cry behind me. The fetal monitor beeped faster, picking up the stress in her heartbeat. "Dad, He sighed, the long, disappointed kind that always made me feel about 8 years old. "You owe me, son. You know you do." And just like that, the old reflex kicked in. The same reflex that had driven every big decision in my life. The same reflex that made his approval feel like oxygen and his disapproval feel like suffocating. I looked back at her. She was clutching the bed rail now, head thrown back, hair plastered to her forehead. The nurse was Cal. My phone felt. "Somewhere." And I hadn't even made the choice yet. If you've never grown up in the shadow of a man like my father, it's hard to explain. From the outside, people saw him as a self-made success story, the kind of guy magazines wrote puff pieces about. From working-class roots to industry titan, a man who built his company from a cramped one-room office to a multi-million-dollar powerhouse. Inside our home, though, he was a force of nature you either learned to obey or you got crushed. My earliest memories of him aren't bedtime stories or playing catch in the backyard. They're business calls at the dinner table, the smell of his cologne and cigar smoke as he walked past me without a word, the way his voice could make a grown man shrink with a single clipped sentence. Good enough didn't exist in his vocabulary. You either exceeded expectations or you failed. When I was 10, I brought home a report card with all A's except for 1 B+ in math. He didn't congratulate me, didn't smile. He held the paper in one hand, sipped his coffee, and said, "So, you decided to quit trying halfway through the semester?" That was the pattern. The better I did, the higher the bar moved. His praise was rationed out in microscopic doses, just enough to keep me chasing the next nod of approval. By the time I hit my teens, I'd stopped trying to win him over with sports or hobbies. The only arena where I could earn his respect was his world, business. When I graduated college, it wasn't even a question of where I'd work. He slid a contract across the table during brunch 2 weeks before graduation. Didn't even ask. And like the obedient son I'd been trained to be, I signed. The job itself wasn't bad. High salary, big clients, swanky offices. But working for my father wasn't a job. It was a lifetime audition. Every meeting was a test. Every project was a chance to prove I was worth the bloodline. Somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that all the sacrifices, the late nights, the missed birthdays, the weekends cut short, were investments. That one day, he'd see me not just as his son, but as his equal. Then I met her. It was at a friend's birthday party. Loud music, cheap beer, plastic cups. She was standing in the kitchen, laughing at something on her phone, and I swear the room got quieter when I saw her. Her name? Emily. She wasn't impressed by titles or job offers or the fact that my last name could get us into any restaurant in the city. She was impressed when I showed up on time, when I remembered her favorite tea, when I left my phone in my pocket instead of on the table during dinner. Emily was warm where my father was cold. She listened more than she talked, and she had this stubborn streak, a refusal to let anyone else dictate her choices. It terrified me at first, and then it made me fall in love with her. We got married after 2 years. My father showed up, of course, wrote a generous check for the honeymoon, posed for the family photos, but it was clear Emily didn't buy into the great man narrative the way everyone else did. She respected him, sure, but she wasn't afraid of him. When we found out she was pregnant, I swear I've never seen her smile so much. And when the ultrasound tech told us we were having twins, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Double trouble." For the first time in my life, I felt like there was something bigger than my father's shadow. We spent months preparing, painting the nursery a soft green, assembling 2 cribs side by side, debating baby names. Emily's mom came over every weekend to help, filling the house with the smell of her famous cinnamon rolls. And in all those months, I made one quiet promise to myself. When the day came, I'd be there. No meetings, no calls, no excuses. Funny how a promise can shatter in a single phone vibration. Part 3, the labor night. The first wave of panic hit the second we stepped into the hospital lobby. The bright overhead lights were too white, too sterile, reflecting off every polished surface. The air smelled faintly of bleach, mixed with something sharper, the acrid tang of hand sanitizer. Somewhere down the hall, a voice over the intercom called for a Dr. Reynolds to labor and delivery stat, and my pulse quickened. Emily squeezed my arm, her knuckles digging into my jacket sleeve. She didn't need to say she was scared. I could feel in the way she leaned into me. We got checked in, bracelets snapped around our wrists, and were whisked into a delivery room. Nurses moved like a well-oiled machine, one adjusting the bed, another fitting an oxygen tube, a third snapping on gloves with sharp pop. At first, I thought I'd be the calm anchor, the steady hand she could hold through the storm. That lasted exactly 20 minutes. The contractions hit hard and fast. Emily's face went from pale to flushed to a shade I'd never seen before. Her hair stuck to her forehead in damp strands, and every breath she took seemed to come from somewhere deep and desperate. She gripped my hand so tightly I lost feeling in my fingers, and each time I tried to ease or hold, she tightened it again like she was afraid I'd drift away. "Stay with me," she gasped once, between clenched teeth. "I'm right here, I promised." And at that moment, I meant it. Hours blurred together. The clock on the wall mocked us, its second hand dragging, each minute stretching out like an hour. The nurses kept checking her dilation, and each time, the news was the same. Slow progress. Too slow. Around 1 a.m., the doctor came in, tall and brisk, flipping through her chart. "Given the way things are going," he said, "we may need to use forceps, possibly even a C-section if there's no improvement." Emily nodded weakly. I tried to look reassuring, but inside, the word forceps rattled around in my head like a loose screw. That's when my phone buzzed for the first time. I ignored it. Whoever it was could wait. At 2:30, it buzzed again. Same number. Same name. Dad. My stomach tightened. I told myself I'd call him back later. No reason to break the fragile bubble of focus I'd built around Emily. But at 3 o'clock on the day, it buzzed a third time, and this time vibration seemed to echo through the room, louder than the beeping monitor or Emily's ragged breaths. I glanced at her. She was groaning through another contraction, sweat glistening along her hairline. I stepped back, muttered something about grabbing my jacket, and answered, "Yeah." My voice was already tense. "Where are you?" His tone was clipped, impatient. "Hospital," I said. "Emily's still in labor." There was a pause, just long enough for me to hope he'd say something fatherly. "How's she doing? Are the babies okay?" Something. Instead, he said, "All right, here's the deal. That client presentation on Monday, you're leading it. It's make or break. I need you rested, sharp, and looking like you own the room." I blinked. "Dad, I can't." "There's nothing you can do there," he cut in. "You're just standing around while the doctors do their thing. You think she'll remember if you were there holding her hand or not. She'll be too out of it to notice." I turned toward the bed. Emily's eyes were closed, her jaw tight, her fingers clenched around the bed rail. "She'll notice," I said. "You've got to think long-term," he pressed. "This deal is huge. You nail it, we're set for years. You blow it, and you'll regret it a hell of a lot more than missing some messy hospital scene." A nurse passed me, adjusting in 4-line, her expression unreadable. I swallowed hard. I can't just leave. For weeks, I told myself it would blow over, that Emily would come around, that the memory of me walking out would soften with time. But the truth? Every day that passed, I saw less of her warmth and more of her resolve. She wasn't yelling anymore, but the quiet was worse. It was resignation. And my father? He didn't even acknowledge what happened. To him, the presentation had been a triumph, proof that I could focus on what mattered. One night, about 3 months after the twins were born, I came home to find Emily asleep on the couch, one baby on her chest, the other in a bassinet beside her. The TV was on mute, casting a cold blue light across her face. I stood there just looking at them, my family, my real life, and I realized something. If I stayed tethered to my father, I'd miss everything. First steps, first words, first birthdays, all sacrificed on the altar of his approval. The guilt I'd been carrying shifted into something harder, sharper. Resentment. I started small. I turned down a weekend conference, claiming I had family commitments. I let a couple of late-night work calls go to voicemail, and when my father barked at me about priorities, I bit my tongue and nodded, but inside, I was already somewhere else. I began quietly reaching out to old contacts, people I'd met through the business who respected me as me, not just his son. I took small freelance projects after hours, telling my father I was handling follow-ups for our existing accounts. The work was exhausting, long days at the office, late nights at home, but every invoice I sent out felt like laying another brick in a wall between me and him. I didn't just want independence. I wanted him to feel what I felt the day I read Emily's text. That cold, sinking realization that you'd lost something you couldn't get back. And I knew exactly how to make that happen. It took 6 months to set the stage. By then, my side work wasn't just paying the bills. It was making more than my salary at his company. I'd built relationships with clients who had grown to trust me, not the family name on the letterhead. When I finally decided it was time, I didn't tell Emily right away. I wanted to hand her the result, not just the plan. I walked into the office that morning wearing my best suit, the same one I'd worn for that damn presentation. I carried a leather folder under my arm. Inside, my resignation letter, a list of the accounts I personally manage, and a notice that I'd be taking them with me. My father was at his desk, reading emails, a mug of black coffee steaming beside him. "Got a minute?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Make it quick, I'm swamped." I set the folder down in front of him and sat. He opened it, glanced at the resignation letter, and snorted. "What's this, some kind of joke?" "No joke," I said evenly. "I'm done." His eyes narrowed. "Don't be dramatic. You got a good thing here. And you think you're going to just... what? Walk away?" I met his gaze. "That's exactly what I'm going to do." He flipped to the client list, scanning the names. I saw the moment it hit him. These weren't just clients. They were high-value accounts that made up a serious chunk of his revenue. "You wouldn't dare," he said quietly. "I would," I said, "and I am." He leaned back in his chair, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. But it wasn't amusement. It was the same look he'd given an opponent just before making the winning move. "You owe me everything," he said. "The job, the house, the life you have." I cut him off. "The life I have is mine, and I'm done living it by your permission." We sat there in silence, the tension crackling between us. Finally, he shoved the folder back across the desk. "Fine, go, but don't come crawling back when you realize you can't make it without me." I stood, tucking the folder under my arm again. "I won't be the one crawling." And with that, I walked out, past the receptionist who looked at me with wide eyes, past the glass doors, into the sunlight. For the first time in my life, I felt the weight of his shadow lift. The first week after I left, I felt strange, not scared. Exactly. More like stepping off a ship after years at sea. The ground felt unsteady, but it was solid. Emily noticed it too. She didn't say, "I told you so," but the way she handed me coffee in the mornings, the little smile she'd give when she caught me play with the twins. It was her way of saying, "You're finally here." And then the call started. First, it was one client, a major account I'd managed personally, letting me know they'd moved their business to my new company. Then another, and another. By the third week, I heard through an old colleague that my father's office was in full damage control mode. Entire afternoons of emergency meetings. Panic calls to board members. The kind of scrambling he used to laugh at when competitors did it. I didn't set out to bleed his business dry. I just took the clients who trusted me enough to follow. But to my father, every one that left wasn't just lost revenue. It was a personal betrayal. The final blow came 2 months later. I was in my home office, the twins giggling in the next room, when an industry newsletter hit my inbox. Front page headline: Veteran CEO loses key account amid internal shakeup. Below it, a photo of my father, jaw tight, eyes hard. The article didn't name me directly, but anyone in the industry could read between the lines. The calls from him stopped after that. Not one word, not even a parting shot. And that was my closure. Not an apology. He'd never give one, but silence. The silence of a man who finally realized he couldn't control me anymore. Sometimes people expect revenge to be loud. Shouting matches, slam doors, grand humiliations. But the best revenge? It's quiet. It's building a life so full, so untouchable, that the person who once held power over you has to sit alone with the fact that they can't reach you anymore. Now, my days aren't measured by presentations or client calls. They're measured in feedings, nap times, and bedtime stories. I'm there for every first step, every first word. Emily and I are stronger than we've ever been. And when I look at my kids, I know they'll never grow up thinking love has to be earned by obedience. Because the shadow I lived in, it ends with me